This isn't a bad neighborhood as they claim it is.
The neighborhood's definitely changed. There's parts of it that used to look like Beirut. Now they're gorgeous.
It's really nice to have someone who hasn't been here in 5 years come back and go, wow.
All of the new housing that's going in now, I think the community is really improving.
It has been on the decline. It is getting a boost of new life.
I live on the south side every day. I live on the south side, come what may. I live on the south side every way. Come on down to this town on the south side.
I want to go way back in the history. We had the old Pico Trail, which is Broad Street going out from the central. When industry started getting developed here and they started looking for spaces, they went up Broad Street, now Elmwood Avenue. So the perception at one time was the South Side was a very nice place to live.
The Irish were clearly the largest ethnic group. There was a very strong, vibrant Jewish community, and there was small Ukrainian communities, some of the Ukrainians that got off those ships in the 1920s and settled up along Public Street. There was a little Italian community, likewise Italians that didn't venture all the way to Federal Hill or Silver Lake in the North End.
Broad Street was a very busy area. There was Temple Emmanuel, a very prestigious synagogue. And of course, Willard Avenue was the center of the stage. It was convenient to the grocery shopping, and yet it was convenient to the city. It could take a streetcar.
We had a lot of dime stores. We had shopping malls, grocery stores, laundromats.
It was a working class neighborhood, blue collar, unions, and the union ideal was strong.
And politically, it was the powerful 10th Ward. Turned out a lot of people ran for office and won.
Lots of leadership came out of here, went to the school, all that sort of thing.
It was like the old-fashioned neighborhood. Everyone knew one another. They watched each other's children as people were going shopping and things like that.
Everything was centered around the parish place. This was the dances, this was the basketball league, this was the baseball teams. This was where people met each other and got married. They had their babies baptized here in the First Communion. People went to the school or they went to Roger Williams.
I grew up down there, so it was gorgeous. It was all immigrants back then, but it was Jewish, Italian, Irish. Everybody took care of their property.
It was a very nice area to live in.
Slowly and eventually it went downhill.
Then around in the 60s, you had disinvestment in the neighborhood.
When they tore us out here on the west side down for redevelopment, they moved everybody from the east side, west side. They pushed us all into South Providence, this little reservation. That's what we're around, really.
My mom came up here from down south. She's originally from Gulfport, Mississippi. In the 70s, she married her husband, and he was from Providence, South Providence, Wiggins Village, Aaron Littlejohn. I can remember my mother working at GE on Eddy Street and Almax. A lot of jewelry factories and different stuff back there. All of a sudden, things just started closing down, you know? People were looking for jobs. I'll say the business were probably moving out of Providence.
During
during those years, it did not have a very positive reputation. What was once a very prosperous community economically, where people lived here and worked here in factories, have since long gone.
In the 60s, as you've had the change in the neighborhood, as crime increased, had very negative connotations that stayed over for a long period of time.
We were coming out of school, and we saw a huge amount of kids from all over, I guess, the area. Dogs and police officers, and we were running down the streets trying to get out of the way. Now, the next day when we came out, along Prairie Avenue, we see broken windows and porches destroyed.
And the shopping center was one of the places I happened to be when blacks started tearing up everything in sight. They were dragging white people out of cars if they passed through, beating them down, and then they'd pick up bricks, smash commercial business, windows, snatch and grab. And my friend Jose, his father, says, here's some guns. If they come over here, shoot them in the ass. My friend Jose, his father ran the store. So, of course, we were standing there, and I'm thinking, with my young and tender age, I hope they're not stupid enough to come over and challenge me with a gun in my hand.
It was mostly the shopping strip that was set on fire, and there was looting and robbing, and no one really knew who was responsible.
We didn't know if it was minorities, our own people, or people from the outside.
Blacks kept saying that whites were coming from different parts of the city to burn down their neighborhood. But then whites were saying that blacks were looting, robbing and all. There was a sense that the police were not to be trusted.
The second day came, and it was the police in the shopping center. And they were, of course, defending the property. The day after that, there was an eerie calm, and people were crying, because of the realism that actually what happened.
Kids were hurt, families were displaced, businesses closed up and never came back. But it had an effect that showed that when you push people who are already so badly oppressed, that they push back after a while.
10 years ago, in terms of you had vacant boarding houses, large number of vacant lots. The impression of South Providence was that was a neighborhood you avoided.
A lot of the people that owned 3 families, they moved out, and then absentee landlords bought the places and they rented them to people who didn't own the houses, so they didn't care about it, and that's when it kind of started going downhill a little bit.
When you had more renters there than homeowners, the building started to deteriorate, and what happened is sometimes houses would be abandoned by the property owners because they would be behind on taxes, they weren't getting enough in rent.
From 1959 to 1980, in that transition period, the Broad Street station, which was then the busiest ladder company in the city, we responded to 348 building fires the first year that I was assigned there. These 3-story tenements became vacant, they couldn't be rented, they became expensive, and the people that owned them would burn them. And some people became very, very wealthy by burning large numbers of buildings and collecting the insurance money on them.
And if you took an aerial photograph of the South Side, anywhere from Point Street down to where 95 cuts by Roger and Spock, you would see lots of vacant land.
When they built Route 95, they knocked down a third of the houses.
Even go back a little farther, Rhode Island Hospital just eating up land like a monster.
When the hospital was built, they buffered themselves with parking lots to the community.
One of the parking lots was where I lived.
Where we were on Landau Street. It was a pretty nice street, actually. There were a lot of vacant houses in the area. They just bought up everything behind our house from one end to the other.
It went from 40 to 70 acres over probably a decade, almost all of that for surface parking, because it was cheaper to buy up the homes in the community than to build parking structures. I think it pretty much remains true to today that I think there's like a half parking structure on that campus, part of the new ER complex that Rhode Island Hospital just developed. But absent that, you just have acres and acres of unattractive landfill with cars.
It could be noisy at times. Sometimes it's like the most relaxing place because, as you can see, this is the only house left here. We don't have no neighbors, so we stay in contact with each other. Even with the previous owner, she was like 80 years old. She died in the house, actually. She wanted to die in her house. Who's ever in charge of getting the houses down from here, like the hospital people, being the only house here, they want to get rid of it. Like, it stands out. All they're going to do is make it into a parking lot, which makes no sense because that's all around us is parking lot.
Located at Thurber's and Prairie Avenues, they called the development Roger Williams Homes.
When it was first built, it didn't really have low-income people in it. It had war workers.
There were two so-called colored blocks, and the black families were segregated until the mid to late 1950s.
It was racially mixed. It was relatively well kept.
It was actually born in the Roger Williams housing development, and there were a few black families.
And with diversity as well, from Irish to African American. The Latinos started moving in as well, and so it was a thriving neighborhood.
And then when the rest of that project was opened up to integration, within a decade, the entire project became black.
And we had the phenomenon that's known around the country where we had white flight from the cities.
As more white people became part of the middle class, they would move and they weren't replaced with other white people. They were replaced with predominantly black people.
We had a management team that worked back in the early 60s when I was coming up. And then in the 70s, just all of a sudden started to fall apart.
As the white families moved out, so did the maintenance, so did the everything else. And it was a case of benign neglect.
They had a program which is called a Community Protection Officer. We worked in the projects. There was a lot going on in Roger Williams. Of course, the drugs were prevalent there, prostitution, a little bit of everything there. You know, people didn't really care too much about taking care of the place. If maintenance didn't clean it up, it wasn't getting cleaned up.
People just started to move out. They started moving people out of the projects and throughout the rest of the city. It just broke it up, basically.
This was the former administration building and the recreational site of the Roger Williams home. It has been closed for the past 10 to 15 years.
There's a lot of stuff that's happened as a result of not having a development over here. Illegal dumping, drugs, and a whole bunch of other unsolicited activity.
The neighborhood went downhill along with the public housing development.
They demolished, I think, 7 of the buildings.
and Roger Williams was deprogrammed from HUD in 1984. There's 2 existing buildings left for 40 families still living there. We want to bring that back online. We want to bring those people that moved, relocated, were forced out, we want to bring them back.
So we came up with some form of limited equity co-op. You don't own your unit. You own a share in a company.
This is something that is yours. If you tear it up, you're going to be tearing up something that is yours. You're not going to be tearing up nothing that's anybody else's. And if you can get the people to respect what is theirs first, then anything else that happens doesn't matter.
It gives me a great deal of pleasure today to endorse the proposal by the Family Housing Development Corporation to take several acres of unused public land that was formerly a public housing development and turn it into new affordable housing for the people of Providence.
One of the reasons that we've seen a decline in public housing is because tenants were never an active part in the development and the day-to-day running of their own living environment.
And I implore and urge anyone in the private sector to come forth and put something up there and say, let's see this project go.
Family Housing Development Corporation was formed in 1986 with its primary purpose being to develop affordable rental housing at this site. It is a 65-unit apartment and remaining true to many of the family-oriented townhouse-style design features that family housing for this site.
I grew up here in South Providence and Roger Williams projects, and I'm looking forward to having people as my neighbors again. And it's just great to have some activity going on over here. New people, new neighbors, some new kids coming over to the recreation center. We're just very pleased about the end product.
I used to live here at Roger Williams many years ago, so to see this turnaround is absolutely amazing. It is also time to reflect upon our lasting accomplishments, all made possible by a vision that took hold more than 25 years ago, when many of us still had no gray hairs.
The city started gobbling up all our land. First they took the big field for recreation, then they took for the 2 elementary schools, then they took for the community center, then they took for the high schools. So the schools are nice, but we need housing. We got to do something. So I called Jim, I said, Family Housing Development should sue us. Why don't you come in and sue us and say we have to develop that housing? And I said, we won't even fight it. We are dedicating today this development, Williams Woods. Williams is from Roger Williams, the founder of Providence. Woods is for Charlotte Woods. She's a longtime resident of Roger Williams' homes. She was a tenant activist and a housing activist. So I'll have her son, Joe Buchanan, come up and say a few words. Joe?
It's been many, many years. It's been over 20 years since Town Development Corporation took over. And I believe that this neighborhood is going to come back. But we did it. We fought, but we did it.
Está bueno. Está bueno, me gusta. Bueno, esto es tranquilo. Buenos vecinos. Hay buenos vecinos. Mucha tranquilidad. Sí. Mucha tranquilidad. ¿Entiendes? Bien, bien. Bien nice.
It's nice to see the resurgence of the residential area with new construction, repairs and renovations, and any of the blighted properties pretty much disappearing.
Arson is not nearly as big a problem as it has been in the past.
Money is starting to be invested in this neighborhood. A lot of it is by nonprofit corporations. I know the services that we've done that have the most impact is the lot maintenance. In fact, we've been able to clean up certainly over 100 vacant lots.
Trinity Gateway project is a project where we have a relatively old cemetery. It's what we think is at the actual gateway to the south side. Our vision is that one of the first things we'd see as you approach this very significant intersection would be this cemetery, excuse the pun, but reborn.
25 years ago, the Southside Community Land Trust began when the university students came in and the people who had been farmers all of their lives in Southeast Asia came in, and some of the people who had lived here for a long, long time but who had heritage perhaps in the South with their families who had been farmers, looked at this land and thought, why not grow something?
This summer I had the opportunity to spend some time at the Southside Community Land Trust Community Gardens on Thurber's Avenue, and there are folks growing all sorts and manner of food, reconnecting to the earth. And there are folks from the Dominican Republic gardening next to a family from Laos. Where else in the world does that happen?
City Farm is a model biointensive farm, and the idea being we want to be able to be part of the recreation of the cityscape and what makes like a vibrant neighborhood. And we feel that having areas where we can grow food and show people how to grow food organically is a great addition to the community.
True, we probably had too much open space 25 years ago for a healthy community. But as we face development pressures in this part of town, if we aren't really careful to make sure that we have pocket parks and open space for food production, we may lose some of the connection we have between each other and nature.
The CDCs, in my opinion, are the saviors of affordable housing in the city of Providence. The economic cost of developing housing is such that for-profit developers really can't build affordable housing here now without the heavy subsidy program.
We had the highest percentage of vacant lots in the South Side, and that led to the development of SWAP, Stop Wasting Abandoned Properties. They were able to intervene and stop people from tearing down homes where folks just abandoned properties, and through arrangements they were able to purchase those properties, refurbish them, and put them out on the market in a very affordable manner.
When we started out, Omni Point was our first large rental development, which was a tax credit deal that we did in 1988-89. That was 55 units of housing. Our portfolio has expanded in this period of time to include approximately 1,200 units of housing. This building, that's how that looked when we acquired it. This is that building now. This is the oldest apartment complex in South Providence. That was a crack house. We now have 18 families that have a decent, safe place to live.
I can just picture back how wonderful it must have been to live here at one time. And if you drive down any of the streets and you see those magnificent buildings, it's beautiful Victorian houses. Now I'm seeing really people recapture those. That to me is just wonderful.
Black contractors have been around for 12 years. They are the founders of the center, and this is their headquarters. We raised over $500,000 to renovate this beautiful complex, and we use a facility for training. There are workstations here. Behind me is a drafting table with plans where minority contractors come in, access information about projects going on. There's been quite a bit of activity. Over here at Blackstone, we have minority general contractors building those houses. Most of them were vacant lots. There were one or two houses that were taken down. Most of that's been done through the PRA and focus around the dreams of Councilwoman Young for home ownership. They're filling in everywhere. Houses are going up. Builders and subcontractors and suppliers are taking advantage of that.
Well, SWAP began as an organization, people remember it as a place you could buy a house for $1. You know, we were a homesteading organization. We focused on what we needed to do to reinvent SWAP in 1992 and 93. We actually started our efforts in Lower South Providence. Had built 85 or 90 homes. We were beginning to develop some master plans for Upper South Providence. This was not about just developing affordable housing. This was primarily about neighborhood revitalization. So in about 1996, we identified a Providence Tanner block, a badly blighted block of burned out buildings, vacant littered lots, and bought the whole block. It was the catalyst that then made our ability to build and sell single-family homes in this neighborhood attractive. Just as I was coming in, Local Initiative Support Corporation, LISC, was coming to Rhode Island. That is major because LISC brought professionalism to nonprofits. We've worked very hard to make sure that the quality of the product that we put out there is very high.
You still see some of the groups around that operate like a social service agency. We've tried to kick it up a notch. We operate this business like a for-profit developer operates his business. We're not about trying to create new ghettos. So we find that the best way to do this is to have a mixed income development. When we go on a street and we go in and we start to rehab and rebuild new construction and renovate the existing construction, it seems to always reverberate that the house down the street that they're seeing everybody else fix up, so now they paint their house, they put a new roof on.
Other groups like Amos House and the homeless shelters that are in the neighborhood, whereas before they didn't pay so much attention to their grass and their landscaping, even they have cranked it up a notch.
It's starting to get a new facelift, and it makes you feel good. Especially when you get in your car, you drive off, you look around, you're next to your next door neighbor. It looks nice and clean over there. The kids look good.
I've been living here 6 years. I'm from South Providence. My mother owned a home for 30 years. She still owns a home. And she still lives over there on Swan Street. Being a homeowner is very good. Extremely well to raise your family. You know where your money's going, into your own home. You're not renting, you're owning your home. So that's a good thing.
Property values have fluctuated, but as you know now in the city of Providence, they're through the roof.
I was looking at some neighborhood statistics the other day. We tracked housing costs, and there was a house on Oxford Street that went for $280,000. Now, 5 years ago, you could have bought 6 blocks of South Providence for $280,000.
This place here was dilapidated housing. Homes spread all over here, but no one lived here. I remember where a house right down the street, a house like that would cost $8,000. Right now, they sold that house across the street for over $250,000.
When I started working here in the South Providence area, I could go to the city, the Providence Redevelopment Agency, and get a lot from the city for $1 a lot, for a buildable housing lot. Well, the last time I tried to go to the city to get a lot, they wanted $45,000 to $50,000 for that lot.
There is some gentrification pressure in terms of looking at these old mill buildings now.
Private builders have, for the first time that I have been here, come into South Providence.
When that happens, people speak of the phenomenon of gentrification. At this point, I don't think that we're seeing that.
We have come full circle to the point where we're now fighting gentrification. As the market heated up elsewhere, right, the number of people who came from outside the state zip codes, and, from the greater Providence area zip codes, from Cranston, from Warwick, has increased.
I think there has been some displacement along the way. Very troubling now is the fact that there has been considerable appreciation on the property tax side.
Rates are going higher and higher so that people either can't afford to pay their mortgage and taxes anymore, or they can't afford to buy in this community anymore.
Even though no one mentions it, the gentrification that occurs when someone comes in from anywhere and wants to live here, that's perfectly fine. We love having people move in. But when you buy the triple decker in a poor neighborhood, restore it, and then charge $1,100 a month for a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment, you know perfectly well that the neighborhood folks, people who are working hourly wages, are not going to be able to live there. Now, there are folks here who've been here for years, who have survived all kinds of ups and downs in real estate values and have really been able somehow or other to stick it out.
The people who are longtime residents understand for the most part that if they sell their land, their house for instance, it'll be difficult to find another house.
The cost of housing's gone up in South Providence 240%, I think the figure was, where the east side was only 50%. And that's the good in terms of it's becoming a more valuable place. The bad is it pushing out the neighborhood and who can buy here. But someplace in the middle, it's like this could be a cool place to live.
The crisis is affecting everybody all over the world. And everybody's trying to really hold on to what they have because it's hard. You know, who wants to be able to one day own a house and then the next day you lose your house? You got to cut back because you have to pay your mortgage, you know, in order to keep your house. You know, you're calling your mortgage company and you're calling the telephone company to give you a little more time to, you know, be able to pay on your bills. You know, it's rough. It really is. It's hard, very hard.
The community has gone through ups and downs of being pretty confident and then running into a brick wall.
So far, it's 18 kids we've lost this year, you know, just shootings. We do this every year because it's something that the community needs. I mean, you know, we've had so much violence that 2 days of celebration is tremendous.
Crime on a daily basis was pretty usual. We had a policy about, you know, if you hear something, don't guess whether it's a backfire of an automobile. Assume it's gunfire, get up and lock the door.
We used to have a lot of shootings, a ton of shootings. Like every night we get a call.
You know, I remember having my house broken into 3 different times. One of the police officers said, well, I can't tell you this, but if I were going to tell you something, I would tell you to move out of this hellhole.
You know, you have other property crimes, the drugs bring in, people breaking into cars, people breaking into houses.
The comment about, you know, people on the south side is, oh, they're a bunch of animals.
2 years ago, we raided the house I grew up in. It was one of the worst crack houses in the city.
You find drugs in every neighborhood, not just in South Providence. Everybody nowadays is doing drugs. You see what I'm saying?
2.5 years ago on Harvard Avenue, we had contractors that were threatening to walk off the job because there was tools were missing, materials were missing from the jobs, and from time to time there's been a lot of drug-related activity here.
You've got Asian gangs, different Asian gangs, you've got different Spanish gangs. The city is divided. You have Chad Brown, East Side, South Side. You got conflicts between families.
A lot of the gangs right now that we're seeing in Providence are predominantly Latin and Asian based. Some of them are more nationally known, like the Latin Kings. They were very prevalent a few years back, and it kind of subsided when some of their leaders were jailed. But now they are back, you know, in the area. But a lot of them are just a group of people giving themselves a name, staking out a particular area where the neighborhood that they're in.
Heroin that gets sold in Rhode Island comes directly from New York. It gets dispersed to Boston, Hartford, Springfield, and North. People from Fall River and New Bedford coming down there, they'll go to Eddy Street, they'll make a phone call, then, you know, their dealer will tell them to drive down a certain street where it's not heavily patrolled. They know where we are all the time.
5 years ago, Jennifer Rivera was murdered, a high-profile murder. She was a girl, was to testify the next day in court, and she got killed in front of her house.
And the police didn't protect her well enough, and she got killed. And ever since then, the youth are always saying her name. You know, Jennifer Rivera, Jennifer Rivera. Even young people who witnessed the murder, they're not talking.
Street workers and young people in this city often grow up like in a battlefield.
I actually witnessed Marcia Carpenter's son getting murdered. I was up in my bedroom on Dexter Street, and I hear pop, pop, pop. I hit the deck because I know it's gunshots that are going off. And I pick up the phone and I dial 911 and I go over to my window and I look out and I see this guy get out of this car. He starts opening fire and he shoots this guy in the head. So the car pulled away. And I run downstairs and go outside and there's this guy laying, on the sidewalk. Body's jerking around and I'm trying to feel for a pulse and he's gone.
That summer, quite a few young people got buried at St. Michael's Church.
And Father Ray Mom had said, we keep saying we have to do something. And then somebody asked him one time, well, what do we do? And that's when he created the Institute.
And our point of views are different than the police, because our street workers were arrested in the past. They know conflicts, they understand the rules of the street, and their goal is not to arrest you, actually develop you and try and help you.
We actually will go out into the streets and talk to the issues that are going on and talk with the people that are there. And try to deal with and mediate the situations that are arising so we can keep down the violence.
If you watch the news and read the local papers, you will think crime, not only, I would say that it had remained the same, but that actually has gotten worse. But I can say that it has improved.
We had the first community police station open in the city. District 2 station is located here in the building with us.
And definitely makes a big difference when you can deal one-on-one with the local police and actually know who your police officers are. And at the same time, make them part of the community.
We used to have a lot of resistance from certain members of the neighborhoods, but now since we've got together with them and there's been an influx of new people down there, they want to change and they know that we got to work together to make that change.
Merchants and people from the community don't see them as a threat.
So I think the community policing has been a great advantage now with the police actually being out there and incorporating the nonviolence training within the police academy.
We were like everybody else. We just called the police when there was a problem, and we weren't really working with the police to identify problems, identify solutions. Now we have a partner in the police department.
I can remember growing up and seeing crack houses, in the areas of South Providence. I think South Providence has really come up with the drugs. The police are really on their jobs. We really appreciate the Providence Police Department of keeping the neighbors safe.
The police attitudes are starting to change too.
We make good relationships with people in the community and the kids, so I think that it definitely helps because they see us as just regular people like them, so it's not like you're just riding by and the only time they see is when you're locking one of their family members up.
The key to the success of our whole communities is a better educated citizenry.
Or the biggest barrier for meaningful employment is having the requisite skills. And unfortunately, some of the residents haven't had a great deal of those credentials.
The Providence school system is a big urban school system that is struggling. There are many people working very hard and making great efforts, and there has been a lot of improvement. But the biggest barriers you see are the challenges of any urban setting.
Just in the last 10 years or so, you've had 4 schools built in the neighborhood. The Met, Health and Science, you've had B.J. Clanton, Pais.
Everyone's been promising South Providence that they're going to help change it or put stuff down here for a long time, and it never happened. No one believed that the city and the state would put $29 million down in South Providence.
It's a real diverse school.
When Elliot and I were asked to take it over, we said, let's redefine what we call vocational ed, because we have the fitness center and that area is open to the community. We were interested in the whole community being involved in how to name the schools and not naming them after someone that people might not have known. And they came up with the name of Liberty, Equality, Justice, and Youth. Our intention always was to do more than a school, was to help change this community.
Right in the heart of South Providence, we had the massive structure of OIC and all of their vocational and career and job training opportunities.
Training thousands of people in all kind of areas: computers, secretarial, welding, machinists, air traffic controls, nursing and health kinds of things with Rhode Island Hospital. We really started English as a second language programs during the first groups of Latino people that came to the community. We were primarily responsible for the job placement for the Southeast Asian Resettlement Program. So OIC doesn't live in the form of an OIC, but it's evolved through CCRI. You know, it goes on and on through what we were able to do.
Organizations like OIC came and unfortunately went, but now you have CCRI.
And the thing that makes me proud is knowing how we built the building, and that even today, when you go through that building, the people that we wanted to serve are still being served.
We started in 1986 as an offshoot of the Rhode Island branch of Opportunities Industrialization Center. And it was started because of the fact that we were qualifying people and training people for jobs, for increased employment opportunities, increased educational opportunities. We've been very successful in hiring local residents. I can remember the first project that I did over here in South Providence, and we hired George Potsidis was the contractor there. Most of his employees were people that came up from the street looking, said, gee, I'm looking for a job. So that when people would come by and, you know, they'd say, well, let me go in there and steal these windows and so forth. The guys that were working said, oh, man, you can't do that. You know, this is our job. We got to come here in the morning and work. So it not only provided security, it also provided some economic incentive for the residents here.
You know, I like to see the folks that are unemployed and underemployed, mostly racial minorities, get a chance to work. In particular, our focus is construction, so that's what we train for.
There's a rich resource in this neighborhood of talent, of people who, again, live in the community, who relate to the patients. The patients are their friends or neighbors who are here in the hospital, and that we want to connect with.
We have 2,800 employees, and we receive over 10,000 applications a year for employment. About 9,000 of them I really can't use.
And we're trying to work towards ways that we can get them interested, number one, in gaining those credentials, and then eventually, you know, how to best get them through a system of education so that they can come out with them and join us. One of the things we did this year was invest in a summer employment program, exclusively high school youth. We were able to hire 22 students only from South Providence, and the only criteria we had was that they were enrolled in school and doing well.
One of our best success stories is the South Providence Development Corporation, which was a partnership with the neighborhood, the hospital sector, so that was Rhode Island Hospital, St. Joseph Hospital, and Women and Infants Hospital, with its goal of educating people here in the community, putting them to work, creating businesses here in the community that generate economic activity.
I was approached by a couple of officials at Lifespan. Rhode Island Hospital is their flagship institution. The initial complaint was it seemed like the neighborhood was beginning to fall down around their campus, and secondarily, they were getting a lot of heated pressure from various neighborhood groups over their lack of hiring of local people. So what we found particularly distressing was out of 8,500, less than 50 people were employed from the local community. Our emphasis had to shift. When the federal dollars began to dry up, we were not able to meet some of the projections we had established for training and placing people in the healthcare institutions like we planned. But it's one of the reasons we decided to start Cleanscape.
Cleanscape is a for-profit company, and it's a wholly owned subsidiary of South Providence Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit organization. The job training program that they had was Cleanscape. We're here to provide employment and industry within the neighborhood of South Providence.
Cleanscape has three main services that we provide: recycling, collection, monitoring, and processing the materials in-house and marketing them, so selling them to paper mills.
75% of our employees are minority. Even though we have people who may not speak English, they're all here legally, and they're working hard. We pay a living wage to our employees. We compete with people who are doing the same thing we're doing at minimum wage with no benefits. Cleanscape does not have a history of making a lot of money. We're doing what we can at Cleanscape to make sure we improve this neighborhood. And we have people walking in every day looking for jobs here, off the street. Come in, yeah, you have any openings? Are you hiring?
When I came to Cleanscape to work, I didn't have a house. You know, now, you know, I mean, I worked here and I was able to, you know, save up some money, and you know, now I got a house, my family's in there, and everybody's happy.
We have a landscaping division. They do have a contract with the city to maintain the vacant lots within the city, which is great for us. We do landscape architecture and we do landscape construction. They are a green company, absolutely.
We said, well, we tend to pick places of challenge, that if they were redeveloped, then things around that development might over time change. And we stumbled on this particular factory, about 26,000 square feet on Gordon Avenue. Everything around it either was or looked abandoned. And we said, perfect. We're still into the preliminary phase of this incubator, and we don't yet have a full set of programs designed to support our tenants the way we'd like to. I don't remember whose idea it was originally, but we said, well, maybe we could make it a green building. And even our board to today says that, you know, we thought you were crazy. Whoever heard of a green building in the middle of a distressed urban neighborhood? And ultimately, this became the Rhode Island, the entire state's first green and smart building. Our flat roof holds a 10 kilowatt solar array, which generates about 8 to 10% of the building's electricity. A third of the roof is planted a green roof. The other thing that you would find on the roof is around the solar array is a special gutter system that collects rainwater. And we use that gray water, that rainwater, to flush our toilets and urinals, as opposed to pumping the drinking water from the Situate Reservoir for that purpose.
We need to find ways of educating and developing skills and employment opportunities for residents in healthcare careers, construction trades, and information technology. In 2003, the Providence Community Health Centers acquired the federated site. The plan for this site is a 60,000 square foot community health center, a 47,000 square foot commercial office space, as well as a 5,000 square foot retail building. Engineering what was typically a manufacturing and printing site into a healthcare and educational complex. In March of 2006, we announced the Prairie Avenue Revitalization Initiative, basically utilizing the planned investment in the Federated Lithographers Building to stimulate broader investment in the community. We are looking to reconnect this section of South Providence to the economic mainstream of the city.
We had consolidation of financial services on the south side. We had bank branches closing.
When I worked at Old Stone Bank, I was very familiar with what Lloyd Griffin did. I saw him a number of times. We had collaborated on a couple things. He was very heavily involved in making sure the banks were investing into the city.
Starting a business as a Latino minority member, well, it was impossible to obtain a loan. And at that time, banks did not see us a productive community per se.
Someone's going to start thinking outside the box. This is not traditional real estate development finance. Citizens has a very large presence in South Providence. Bank America is trying. It's sort of hot and cold. Now, Citizens wants to go out and buy another bank. They need federal CRA credit. They seem to get hot. Citizens seems to stay hot the longest.
My mother knew someone through the bank, Citizens Bank, and she got me an application. And we went down there and I filled out the application and they told me about Rhode Island housing. How you was able to own a home through Rhode Island housing.
In 1994, the MIDC, which is the Minority Investment Development Corporation, was founded along with the Rhode Island Coalition for Minority Investment. They were both really founded with a mission to provide access to capital to underserved businesses.
And as I point out to people, we've gone from redlining to greenlining. So the challenge now is the cost of credit. So you have people getting into high-cost loans. You have the expansion of second-tier financial services, whether it be pawn shops, check cashers, rent-to-own centers.
Oasis was founded in 1992. A friend of mine brought the idea to me and said, how about exploring the possibility of bringing a credit union, into our community. Well, I think the gap that is trying to fill then was to make available access to capital that ordinarily people in this neighborhood will not get from the commercial banks.
We've got sharp competitors through the check cashing places. And again, it's all about education. People have to be educated that your check cashing venues are not the way to go in terms of you being able to keep money in your pocket.
Rent-a-center is not something that we encourage, and we are telling them, come and open an account. You will have control of your check. Nobody needs to be taking that 10%, 8%, 18% out of your check before they catch it for you. But the neighborhood is just like they are not ready for it.
South Providence is kind of a funny place. 3 years ago, a Latino family wouldn't cross Broad Street. A Dominican family wouldn't come north of, like lower Broad Street. And then you had African American families who would only live here. That sort of has all changed.
All of a sudden, it seemed there's like a ton more Latino-owned businesses, and there'd be frustration from folks that have lived here for a while. How come there's never black folks hired in any of the new Latino businesses that are opening?
When they first came here, black would try to give him a job, get him hooked up one night because he wanted to see him eat. But now they got all the business and they only hire their people. And you got to hire the people from the community too.
If the Latino businesses are going to grow, they need to expand from the ethnic type of services. Latino business owners need to become business owners, period.
A vast majority of the businesses rent their space, right? And so then if you renovate, what can happen? The rents can go up. And then you get squeezed out and the whole area gets gentrified commercially, as well as the danger of that happening residentially. I think the thing that Southside Broad Street's done is gotten people to think about the neighborhood sort of from an economic perspective, but that's not down on high, In the past, there have been things like getting tree planters up and program to get awnings and signage. In the last year or so, a lot of great work has been done by Jose Brito with the Southside Merchants Association.
Development has taken place on the south side with the sweat and tears of Latinos who have taken the risk to start their businesses. If I own a beauty shop and you own one, we cannot be friends because we are competitors, and not only competitors but enemies. And that very much has been diluted. With the understanding and the education of the strength in numbers, there is a coordinated communication among the businesses. It also has allowed the state and the city to take notice of these businesses and actually work with the Merchant Association in trying to help these businesses grow.
Porque la Broa es la calle principal de aquí de la ciudad de Providence, y aparte de eso tengo muy buenas amistades y me gusta, vivo cerca de aquí.
I mentioned the diversified culture. I think that's not really being played up as much as it could be. Again, I know that a lot of it, they are Latino businesses, but there are a lot of other types of businesses within the area too. There's African businesses, Jamaican businesses, there's some Asian businesses.
I want to make it versatile so everybody can come in and feel welcome, because there's different kind of people coming in, white, black, Hispanics, Chinese, everybody. So I want to make sure they're all welcome no matter what, Growing up in Southside, and hip-hop always in my heart. I figure if other restaurants have their own kind of concept, I can do my own thing,
I carry a little bit of everything to suit everybody's taste. I've actually been doing t-shirt taxi now for the last 3 years. More people living in the area, more money for me.
The neighborhood's busy, it's busy, it's sort of, there's always sort of more and more people, more and more energy, more and more activity. And you can say it's very haphazard, and it is, that's true. Where does the state put economic development money? And if they do, they blow a whole bunch on one big project and make a big hoopla and say this is going to change the world. In fact, that's what the stuff they want to do along the waterfront. One description I've heard is, it's going to be like little nice little she spots like God only knows Pat Conley's Pier or some of those projects. You know, you can just picture it now. You're going to have well-off white people sitting around looking out on the water, et cetera, and people of color, oh, see, we do have jobs for you, here you go, you know, coming out and bringing them their drinks.
In order to have a vibrant community, you must have, you know, development take place. And again, you know, it has its positives and its negatives, but overall, I am a believer that the changes have been positive.
Things people bring with them, they are part of their acculturation. I think people can keep what's good about them, keep what makes them proud, what gives them a sense of self, and they just add that to this mosaic that is, you know, a wonderful neighborhood.
Part of the vibrancy that I adore here is that it combines the diversity of education and ethnicity and nationality.
The people here, we all try to get along here. Well, I'm proud of my neighbors. I got neighbors right across the street. They're Spanish, and they're like family.
South Providence has the largest Latino community across the state.
We are only one. There's no Guatemalans, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans. It's only Latinos. That's it.
There's more white families coming into the neighborhood.
And also lots of people from Southeast Asia, Cambodian, Hmong.
It's multicultural, it's multilingual. You know, we like sort of the diversity that takes place in the neighborhood, but so that attracts new investments.
I mean, every walk of life is here. You know, this is our United Nations.
It is truly a melting pot.
Southside.
I love South Providence. I love South Providence.
I love it. Come on, everybody come back, move back to South Providence. A nice area, nice homes.
I've seen all the negativity that's happened here, and I've seen the growth as well.
We have our problems here in South Providence, but we have a lot of good things in South Providence.
All the things here, the tools that we need to help each other.
We hadn't been back in years, and I was amazed how much it had improved.
The place is really evolved. I was here when this place was beautiful. Then it became a ghetto. Now it's become a suburb. The houses are springing up, and the place is coming back to life again. We've really come a long way in South Providence.
Southside.